When we think about British leadership today, it's worth asking ourselves the question, in what way does Britain actually lead? I don't think that Britain particularly leads in many of the ways that it historically thought of itself as leading, in the sense of sending out forces to conquer distant lands and a kind of military or colonial leadership. To the extent that Britain has a leadership role to play today, that leadership role has to do with the rule of law, with democracy, with forging a society that is not overly biased on the basis of your racial or ethnic or class background. And Britain does these things, with varying degrees of success. On the one hand, we have examples of people like Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, of a Pakistani Muslim immigrant background. And we can hold these things up, as we might President Obama in the US, as signs of a deep tolerance in certain segments of British society. But we have counterexamples too. And so I think British leadership really manifests itself in the kinds of values that Britain finds itself upholding. If Britain reverts to a place of sort of strident nationalism, it won't be playing a leadership role, I think, of any significance in the world culturally. Or rather, it will be echoing, in fact, similar trends that we see elsewhere. When I lived in London, what I found, and I lived in London for the first decade of this century, when I lived in London, what I found remarkable about the place was the robust form of democracy and the robust exercise of free speech in journalism, criticizing the Iraq War or the so-called war on terror. And coming from the US, I thought that British democracy, British journalism, the British free press was quite wonderful in a way to behold. Without imagining it to be perfect, it certainly isn't perfect, but it seemed better to me than in the United States and certainly in Pakistan, where I live now. However, in the last few years, what we have seen is a real setback, I think, for British democracy, a kind of plebiscite-based, referendum-based, one vote to end all vote kind of democracy, followed by no attempt to really occupy the center ground of politics. Instead, a radical nationalistic viewpoint being sort of thrust down the throats of a majority of citizens, or at least a strong plurality of citizens who don't agree with that viewpoint. And all of these sorts of changes have, I think, weakened Britain's claim to a leadership role. And those who imagine that Britain, which is a sort of small-sized island with a population, about half of that of the province of Punjab, which is the province in Pakistan where I currently live, can have a leadership role that isn't based on its values, but instead on something else, some kind of other strength, I think is deeply misguided. So for me, Britain has become less of a leader in the world, on the world stage, and has had a big setback in terms of its own ability to stand up for values that I think Britain claims to stand for very often.